Dr. Vex Tharion had always prided herself on pattern recognition. 20 cycles studying xenocultural development had taught her that species followed predictable trajectories: tool use, agriculture, writing, spaceflight, enlightenment. The formula worked for everyone from the crystalline Vorthak to the gas-breathing helium dancers. Everyone except the human. She stared at the holographic display floating above her workstation, mandibles clicking in frustration. On the left, diplomatic reports describing Earth as a recovering agrarian world, recently unified after minor territorial disputes, eager to learn from their galactic betters. On the right, fragments of something called the Iliad, where armies slaughter each other with disturbing creativity over a kidnapped queen. Minor territorial disputes, she muttered, scrolling through descriptions of Bronze Age warriors dragging corpses behind chariots. Recovering agrarians who invented 14 different ways to disembowel enemies with farm tools. The lab door chimed. Officer Chen Reiko entered with that peculiar human expression, lips curved upward, eyes slightly narrowed. Vex had learned this meant either friendliness or predatory amusement. With humans, the distinction remained frustratingly unclear. Dr. Tharion, still buried in our dusty old stories? Chen settled into the visitor's chair with fluid grace that belied her species' supposed clumsiness. I brought tea. Your metabolism processes caffeine well, right? Your mythology contradicts everything we know about human development. Vex accepted the steaming cup, noting how Shen's hands moved with precise efficiency. According to your diplomats, Earth achieved peace through philosophical evolution, but these texts suggest your ancestors were professionally violent. Chen's smile widened fractionally. Mythology tends toward exaggeration. Heroes need dramatic obstacles. This reads more like instruction manual than fiction. Vex highlighted a passage about siege warfare, detailed descriptions of psychological warfare, supply line disruption, civilian demoralization. Your poets had surprisingly comprehensive military education. Humans have always been storytellers. We embellish. Do you? Vex pulled up comparative data. Every other species' mythology reflects their actual capabilities. Vorthak legends describe crystal singing and light bending because they possessed those abilities. Your myths describe systematic annihilation techniques that supposedly predate your technological development. Chen sipped her tea thoughtfully. What's your hypothesis, Doctor? Either your ancestors were remarkably imaginative, or your diplomatic corps has been remarkably creative with historical revision. The human's laugh sounded genuine, but Vex noticed Chen's posture remained perfectly balanced, weight distributed for rapid movement. Curious for someone from a peaceful agricultural world. You think we're hiding something? I think your species demonstrates unusual consistency in what they choose to hide. Vex gestured at another display. Your art, literature, entertainment, all celebrate conflict resolution through overwhelming force. Yet your diplomats insist humans naturally gravitate toward cooperation. Maybe we learned from our mistakes. When? Your cultural artifacts show no transitional period. No philosophical revolution, no societal transformation. Yesterday you were writing odes to tactical superiority. Today you're requesting agricultural assistance. Chen set down her cup with deliberate care. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that either human psychological development violates every known law of cultural evolution, or someone has been curating your image very carefully. And which seems more likely to you? Vex studied the woman across from her. Chen's file listed her as a cultural liaison, responsible for facilitating human integration into galactic society. But her eyes held the calculating assessment of someone who evaluated threats professionally. I think, Vex said slowly, that species don't usually send their farmers to represent them to advanced civilizations. Chen's smile never wavered. Dr. Tharion, has anyone ever told you that you're remarkably perceptive? Is that meant as compliment or warning? With humans, Chen said, rising smoothly from her chair, the distinction is often academic. She paused at the doorway. One piece of advice, Doctor. Sometimes the most dangerous assumption is believing someone is exactly what they appear to be. Alone again, Vex stared at her displays. On the left, diplomatic reports of a species seeking guidance and protection. On the right, myths describing creatures who turned warfare into art form. She opened a new file and began typing. Hypothesis: human diplomatic strategy may represent coordinated deception rather than cultural evolution. Outside her viewport, a human transport glided past with predatory elegance, its hull adorned with symbols that definitely weren't agricultural. Commander Zeph Corvani had witnessed the siege of Altair Prime, orchestrated the defense of the Nebula Gates, and earned 3 distinguished service medals before his 30th cycle. He considered himself reasonably familiar with military strategy, which made the documents spread across his secure workstation all the more disturbing. "This can't be accurate," muttered his aide, Lieutenant Crix, peering over his shoulder at tactical diagrams that supposedly represented primitive human warfare. "These formation adjustments require mathematical precision. The logistics alone are beyond anything we've seen from pre-spaceflight civilizations." Corvani highlighted a section describing something called blitzkrieg. "Look at this coordination. Combined arms, synchronized timing, resource allocation that accounts for variables 3 levels deep." The War College's tactical simulation chamber hummed around them, walls lined with holographic displays showing human military doctrine acquired through carefully unofficial channels. What had started as routine intelligence gathering on their newest galactic neighbors had become something approaching professional anxiety. General Thask entered without ceremony, her crystalline carapace reflecting the blue glow of tactical displays. "Status report, Commander. We've analyzed 17 separate human conflicts spanning their last millennium. Each demonstrates escalating sophistication in operational planning." Corvani gestured at a timeline showing technological progression. "Their rate of tactical innovation exceeds our own during comparable development periods." "How significantly?" "By approximately 400%. Thask's optical clusters focused with audible precision. Take their second global conflict, fought with what they classify as primitive technology, chemical propellants, mechanical vehicles, radio communication. Yet the strategic complexity rivals our contemporary operations." Lieutenant Crix activated a 3-dimensional battlefield map. They coordinated simultaneous campaigns across multiple continents, managed supply lines spanning entire hemispheres, and executed deception operations that fooled enemies for months, while maintaining industrial production that converted their entire civilization into a war machine within 2 cycles, Corvani added. "Their factory output during peak conflict exceeded our current military manufacturing capacity." Thask studied the displays with uncomfortable intensity. "These are the same humans requesting technical assistance with interstellar navigation? The same ones whose diplomatic corps apologizes for their ancestors' regrettable tribal conflicts and their performance in joint military exercises?" Corvani pulled up assessment records. "Consistently mediocre. They follow orders adequately, demonstrate basic tactical understanding, but show no innovation or independent thinking. Yet, private observations suggest otherwise. Our embedded officers report that human units perform poorly during official evaluations, but excel dramatically when they believe they're unobserved. Corvani highlighted anomalous data points. Training accidents that perfectly simulate complex combat scenarios. Equipment failures that somehow test exactly the capabilities they're supposed to lack. Lieutenant Quicks activated additional files. We've also noticed their questions during briefings. They ask about our defensive protocols, supply chain vulnerabilities, command structure hierarchies, always framed as eager students seeking education. Are intelligence operatives conducting reconnaissance? Thask observed. The pattern is consistent across all human military attachments. They underperform when evaluated, overperform when unobserved, and ask questions that would be invaluable for planning offensive operations. General Thask's optical clusters dimmed. Commander, in your professional assessment, are we training allies or providing intelligence to potential adversaries? Corvani stared at tactical diagrams showing human innovations in combined arms warfare, asymmetric conflict, and psychological operations. Strategies that had transformed their species from scattered tribes to planetary dominion in remarkably few generations. General, he said finally, I believe we've been assuming humans are learning from us, but what if they've been studying us? The simulation chamber fell silent, except for the quiet hum of processors analyzing data that suggested their newest galactic neighbors might be their most dangerous ones. The emergency session had been called with unusual discretion. No official records, no public announcements, just 5 representatives from different sectors of galactic civilization gathering in a shielded conference room aboard Station Meridian. Ambassador Kreltak of the Trade Federation adjusted her environmental suit and wondered why everyone looked equally uncomfortable. Let's dispense with pleasantries, announced Director Vash from Intelligence Operations, his voice carrying the gravelly undertone that meant serious business. We're here because we've all noticed the same thing. The humans, stated Professor Neith from the Academic Consortium. Her tentacles writhed with obvious agitation. They don't add up. Captain Yorick from Frontier Security nodded grimly. My border patrols report human vessels in sectors they claim they've never explored. When questioned, they apologize for navigation errors. Navigation errors that consistently place them near strategic resources, Vash added. Rare minerals, defensive positions, communication relay stations. Ambassador Kreltak activated her personal datapad. Trade records show humans requesting basic industrial equipment while simultaneously placing orders for materials that require advanced manufacturing techniques. They claim they need help developing metallurgy, then specify alloy compositions that our best engineers find challenging. Professor Nith's academic composure cracked slightly. Educational exchange programs reveal humans asking remarkably pointed questions about our cultural weaknesses. They want to understand our decision-making processes, hierarchical structures, psychological pressure points, always disguised as anthropological curiosity. They study us, Captain Jorik said bluntly. Not with us, not from us. They study us like specimens. Director Vash pulled up holographic displays showing communication intercepts. Encrypted transmissions between human colonies use mathematical progressions we can't decode. Either they've independently developed cryptographic systems more advanced than ours, or they've been understating their computational capabilities. By approximately 600%, Professor Nith interjected, based on processing power required for their requested calculations versus observed performance metrics. Ambassador Kreltak felt her breathing apparatus cycle more rapidly. The development assistance programs, infrastructure loans, technological transfers, cultural integration support, all providing detailed intelligence about our capabilities, industrial capacity, and resource allocation, Vash confirmed. They've mapped our entire logistical network under the guise of learning how civilized societies function. Captain Jorik activated tactical displays showing human settlement patterns. Look at their colony placement. They claim to seek peaceful agricultural worlds, but every location provides strategic oversight of major shipping lanes or defensive choke points. Coincidence? Professor Knight asked hopefully. 17 consecutive coincidences spanning 47 sectors, Jervik replied. That's not chance, that's systematic positioning. The room fell quiet as implications crystallized. Ambassador Kreltag voiced what everyone was thinking. We've been patronizing them, treating them like eager students grateful for our guidance. While they've been conducting comprehensive intelligence operations against every major galactic power, Vash concluded, economic capabilities, military weaknesses, cultural pressure points, industrial infrastructure, resource dependencies. Professor Nigg's tentacles had gone completely still. How long have they been planning this? Planning what, exactly? Captain Jorik demanded. We don't even know their objectives. Maybe that's the point, Ambassador Kreltag said quietly. We assume they wanted what every developing species wants. Membership, protection, technological advancement. But what if their goals are completely different? Director Vash pulled up a final display showing human diplomatic requests over the past several cycles. Every favor asked, every assistance program, every cultural exchange has provided them with information they could use to compromise our security. And we gave it to them willingly, Professor Nith whispered. Because we thought we were helping primitive farmers learn to navigate galactic society. Captain Jorik stared at the evidence surrounding them. So, what exactly have we been training them to do? Nobody had an answer, which, they were beginning to realize, might be the most terrifying discovery of all. The First Contact Memorial Station had been designed to celebrate peaceful cooperation between species. Its grand atrium featured crystalline sculptures representing unity, harmony, and mutual understanding. Today, it hosted the annual Cultural Exchange Gala, where diplomats demonstrated traditional art forms and shared historical perspectives. Dr. Vex Tharion watched from the observation deck as human delegates performed something called interpretive dance, their movements fluid and precisely coordinated. Too coordinated, she thought, for recreational activity. The patterns resembled tactical formations more than artistic expression. Fascinating performance, commented Ambassador Suldan from the Hegemony Council, joining her at the railing. Though I noticed their cultural presentations always seem to include group choreography. Team-building exercises disguised as entertainment, Vex replied. They're maintaining combat readiness during peacetime social events. Below them, the human delegation mingled with other species, asking the same probing questions they'd been asking for cycles. Always curious about technological limitations, always interested in defensive capabilities, always eager to understand how their new friends thought and planned and feared. Captain Jorik's voice crackled through the station's emergency communication system. All personnel maintain calm. We have reports of marauder vessels approaching the outer perimeter. This is likely a false alarm, but security protocols are now active. The change was immediate and absolute. Every human in the atrium stopped their polite conversations and turned toward predetermined positions with mechanical precision. No discussion, no confusion, no hesitation. They moved like components of a single organism, each individual automatically assuming roles that formed a defensive perimeter around critical stations. Officer Chen Reiko appeared beside the main communication console, as if she'd been planning this moment for months, which, Vex realized with growing horror, she probably had. Captain Jorik, Chen's voice carried none of its usual diplomatic warmth. "We're tracking 12 marauder vessels, not 6, as your sensors indicate. They're using gravitic shadows to mask their approach vector." "How could you possibly?" "Because we've been monitoring their communication frequencies for the past 8 months and identified their tactical preferences 3 months ago." Chen's fingers danced across alien controls with impossible familiarity. "They'll attempt to disable station defenses first, then board through maintenance airlocks 7 through 12. Ambassador Suldan stared in shock. "You've been tracking marauder fleet movements?" "We've been tracking everyone's fleet movements," replied another human, appearing at Suldan's shoulder with quiet menace. "Marauders, pirates, legitimate shipping, military patrols, we know who goes where, when they go there, and what they carry." The station's defensive systems activated with efficiency that stunned seasoned military personnel. Weapon arrays that had never fired in anger now moved with practiced precision, targeting solutions appearing faster than automated systems should have been capable of processing. "How are our defense grids responding so quickly?" Captain Jorik's voice carried bewildered alarm. Chen's smile returned, but now it resembled something carved from winter ice. "We've been optimizing your defensive software for months. Little improvements here and there, always with proper authorization. Amazing what you can accomplish when people trust you to help." The Marauder attack lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, 12 hostile vessels had been reduced to expanding debris clouds, with casualty efficiency that made professional soldiers uncomfortable. Dr. Vex Tharion found herself standing next to Chen in the aftermath, watching human personnel coordinate cleanup operations with the same casual competence they demonstrated during diplomatic reception. "This was all theater," Vex said quietly. "The cultural exchanges, the assistance requests, the eager student routine." "Not theater," Chen corrected. "Preparation. We've been learning what we needed to learn." "And what was that?" Chen gestured at the mixed species crowd around them, now looking at humans with expressions ranging from awe to terror. "Whether you were threats or assets, whether you could be trusted with neighbors who didn't need management." "And your conclusion?" "Still evaluating," Chen replied. "But today's performance was encouraging. You didn't panic, you didn't interfere, and you're asking the right questions instead of the wrong ones." Vex stared at the woman who had spent months pretending to be a cultural liaison while systematically cataloguing every weakness in galactic civilization. "What happens now?" Chen's diplomatic mask slipped back into place, but her eyes retained their predatory assessment. "Now we see if the galaxy is ready for neighbors who don't need protecting." As she walked away, Vex realized the most unsettling truth of all. They had never been the advanced civilization offering guidance to primitive newcomers. They had been the test subjects, carefully observed by creatures whose mythology hadn't been exaggeration after all. It had been understatement.